Good morning. Thanks for joining me today. So, probably won't be having the live stream tomorrow or Monday. Gonna head out to California. But after that, hopefully. Okay, Judges chapter 6, verses 1 through 40. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord turned them over to Midian for 7 years. The Midianites overwhelmed Israel. Because of Midian, the Israelites made shelters for themselves in the hills, as well as caves and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and the people from the east would attack them. They invaded the land and devoured its crops all the way to Gaza. They left nothing for the Israelites to eat, and they took away the sheep, oxen, and donkeys. When they invaded with their cattle and tents, they were as thick as locusts. Neither they nor their camels could be counted that came to devour the land. Israel was so severely weakened by Midian that the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help because of Midian, he sent a prophet to the Israelites. He said to them, "This is what the Lord God of Israel says. I brought you up from Egypt and took you out of the place of slavery. I rescued you from Egypt's power and from the power of all who oppressed you. I drove them out before you and gave their land to you. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are now living, but you have disobeyed me." The Lord's angelic messenger came and sat down under the oak tree in Ophrah, owned by Joash the Abiezrite. He arrived while Joash's son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress, so he could hide it from the Midianites. The Lord's messenger appeared and said to him, "The Lord is with you, courageous warrior." Gideon said to him, "Pardon me, but if the Lord is with us, why has such disaster overtaken us? Where are all his miraculous deeds our ancestors told us about?" They said, "Did the Lord not bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to Midian." Then the Lord himself turned to him and said, "You have the strength. Deliver Israel from the power of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?" Gideon said to him, "But Lord, how can I deliver Israel? Just look, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my family." The Lord said to him, But I will be with you. You will strike down the whole Midianite army." Gideon said to him, "If you really are pleased," Gideon said to him, If you really are pleased with me, then give me a sign as proof that it really is you speaking with me. Do not leave this place until I come back with a gift and present it to you." The Lord said, "I will stay here until you come back." Gideon went and prepared a young goat, along with unleavened bread made from an ephah of flour. He put the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot. He brought the food to him under the oak tree and presented it to him. God's messenger said to him, "Put the meat and unleavened bread on this rock and pour out the broth." Gideon did as instructed. The Lord's messenger touched the meat and the unleavened bread with the tip of his staff. Fire flared up from the rock and consumed the meat and unleavened bread. The Lord's messenger then disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the Lord's messenger, he said, "Oh no, Master, Lord, I have seen the Lord's messenger face to face." The Lord said to him, "You are safe. Do not be afraid. You are not going to die." Gideon built an altar for the Lord there and named it, "The Lord is on friendly terms with me." To this day it is still there in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. That night the Lord said to him, "Take the bull from your father's herd, as well as a second bull, one that is 7 years old. Pull down your father's Baal altar and cut down the nearby Asherah pole. Then build an altar for the Lord your God on the top of this stronghold according to the proper pattern. Take the second bull and offer it as a burnt sacrifice on the wood from the Asherah pole that you cut down." So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did just as the Lord had told him. He was too afraid of his father's family and the men of the city to do it in broad daylight, so he waited until nighttime. When the men of the city got up the next morning, they saw the Baal altar pulled down, the nearby Asherah pole cut down, and the second bull sacrificed on the newly built altar. They said to one another, "Who did this?" They investigated the matter thoroughly and concluded that Gideon, son of Joash, had done it. The men of the city said to Joash, "Bring out your son, so we can execute him." He pulled down the Baal altar and cut down the nearby Asherah pole. But Joash said to all those who confronted him, "Must you fight Baal's battles? Must you rescue him? Whoever takes up his cause will die by morning. If he really is a god, let him fight his own battles. After all, it was his altar that was pulled down. That very day, Gideon's father named him Jerubbaal, because he had said, "Let Baal fight with him," for it was his altar that was pulled down. All the Midianites, Amalekites, and the people from the east assembled. They crossed the Jordan River and camped in the Jezreel Valley. The Lord's Spirit took control of Gideon. He blew a trumpet, summoning the Bezrites to follow him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh and summoned them to follow him as well. He also sent messengers throughout Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to meet him. Gideon said to God, "If you really intend to use me to deliver Israel as you promised, then give me a sign as proof. Look, I am putting a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece and the ground around it is dry, then I will be sure that you will use me to deliver Israel as you promised." The Lord did as he asked. When he got up the next morning, he squeezed the fleece, and enough dew dripped from it to fill a bowl. Gideon said to God, "Please do not get angry at me when I ask for just one more sign. Please allow me one more test with the fleece. This time make only the fleece dry while the ground around it is covered with dew." That night God did as he asked. Only the fleece was dry and the ground around it was covered with dew. So Israel acts bad again, and they get handed over to Midian. And they cry out to God because of the severe oppression. I like verse 6. Israel was so severely weakened by Midian that the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. Well, I guess we don't have any other option here. Okay, God, help us. It's like, can he be your first go-to? Oh well. Yeah, and certainly this is a interesting juxtaposition here with the Lord's messenger coming to Gideon while he's threshing wheat in a wine press, and by itself an inherently cowardly act, because you want to thresh wheat outside of a wine press because a wine press is naturally contained. So, and you want the wind to come in to pick the chaff up out of the wheat that you're threshing. So, and this is actually a complaint that I've heard from several different people in my own life. In Judges chapter 6:13, Gideon said to him, "Pardon me, but if the Lord is with us, why has such disaster overtaken us? Where are all his miraculous deeds our ancestors told us about?" They said, "Did the Lord not bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to Midian." And I've had complaints similarly directed in that why is God not acting with such power as he displayed in the Old Testament? Why is my dog barking? Yeah. And then the Lord himself turned to him and said, "You have the strength. Deliver Israel from the power of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?" So, each of us who professes the name of Christ has an important role to do in the body of Christ. And so when we see such disaster and such bad things happening out there, I think it's we need to do what we can and what the Lord empowers us to alleviate said disaster. So, after all, we're the body of Christ on earth. Luke chapter 22, verse 54, through chapter 23, verse 12. Then they arrested Jesus, led him away, and brought him into the high priest's house. But Peter was following at a distance. When they had made a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down among them. Then a slave girl, seeing him as he sat in the firelight, stared at him and said, "This man was with him too." But Peter denied it. "Woman, I don't know him." Then a little later, someone else saw him and said, "You're one of them too." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." And after about an hour, still another insisted, "Certainly this man was with him, because he too is a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." At that moment, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. Then the Lord turned and looked straight at Peter, and Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. Now, the men who were holding Jesus under guard began to mock him and beat him. They blindfolded him and asked him repeatedly, "Prophesy, who hit you?" They also said many other things against him, reviling him. When day came, the council of the elders of the people gathered together, both the chief priests and the experts in the law. Then they led Jesus away to their council and said, "If you are the Christ, tell us." But he said to them, "If I tell you, you will not believe. And if I ask you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God." So they all said, "Are you the Son of God then?" He answered them, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need further testimony? We have heard it ourselves from his own lips." Then the whole group of them rose up and brought Jesus before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man subverting our nation, forbidding us to pay the tribute tax to Caesar, and claiming that he himself is Christ, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He replied, "You say so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no basis for an accusation against this man." But they persisted in saying, "He incites the people by teaching throughout all Judea. It started in Galilee and ended up here." Now when Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. When he learned that he was from Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who also happened to be in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, but because he had heard about him and was hoping to see him perform some miraculous sign. So Herod questioned him at considerable length. Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the experts in the law were there, vehemently accusing him. Even Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, dressing him in elegant clothes, Herod sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Herod and Pilate became friends with each other, for prior to this, they had been enemies. The, oh goodness, I'm going to do this injustice, but, in chapter 23, verse 3, so Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He replied, "You say so." And the Greek there, which I'm going to butcher, is suleges, or, yeah, so something like that. And it's, from what I've heard, it's a kind of a difficult thing to translate culturally for us, in that it means I agree with the content of what you've said, but not in the way that you mean it. So in this particular case, Pilate is asking Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Like, are you another insurrectionist? Because That's what they're accusing him of essentially. In 23:2, they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man subverting our nation, forbidding us to pay the tribute tax to Caesar, and claiming that he himself is Christ, a king." So they're claiming he's an insurrectionist. And so Pilate asks him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And in a certain way, he is. But in a certain way, he isn't what Pilate is accusing him of, which is an insurrectionist, as Jesus' kingdom is one of heaven and not earth. And this is confirmed in other Gospels, where in his conversation with Pilate, he says, "If my kingdom were of this earth, my followers would be fighting for me right now." So, just want to address that a little bit. Also, you get the dramatic theatrical version with a rooster actually crowing as Peter denies Jesus here. Okay. Well, carrying on. Psalm chapter 95, verse 1, through 96, verse 13. Come, let's sing for joy to the Lord. Let's shout out praises to our protector who delivers us. Let's enter his presence with thanksgiving. Let's shout out to him in celebration. For the Lord is a great God, a great king who is superior to all gods. The depths of the earth are in his hand, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it. His hands formed the dry land. Come, let's bow down and worship. Let's kneel before the Lord our Creator. For he is our God. We are the people of his pasture, the sheep he owns. Today, if only you would obey him. He says, "Do not be stubborn like they were at Meribah, like they were that day at Massah in the wilderness, when your ancestors challenged my authority and tried my patience, even though they had seen my work. For 40 years I was continually disgusted with that generation, and I said, 'These people desire to go astray. They do not obey my commands.' So I made a vow in my anger. They will never enter into the resting place I had set aside for them." 96. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Sing to the Lord, praise his name. Announce every day how he delivers. Tell the nations about his splendor. Tell all the nations about his amazing deeds. For the Lord is great and certainly worthy of praise. He is more awesome than all gods. For all the gods of the nation are worthless, but the Lord made the sky. Majestic splendor emanates from him. His sanctuary is firmly established and beautiful. Ascribe to the Lord, O family of the nations. Ascribe to the Lord splendor and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the splendor he deserves. Bring an offering and enter his courts. Worship the Lord in holy attire. Tremble before him, all the earth. Say among the nations, "The Lord reigns." The world is established. It cannot be moved. He judges the nations fairly. Let the sky rejoice and the earth be happy. Let the sea and everything in it shout. Let the fields and everything in them celebrate. Then let the trees of the forest shout with joy before the Lord. For he comes to judge the earth. He judges the world fairly, and the nations in accordance with his justice. Was listening to a bit about the typology of Jesus in the Old Testament, and so in Psalm 95 you have in verse 11, "So I made a vow in my anger, they will never enter into the resting place I had set aside for them." And in Hebrews you have the arguments towards why Jesus is more important than the angels and how he serves as a high priest for us, but a better high priest than all the previous high priests, and how he makes intercession for us so that we can go into the Holy of Holies. And in one particular chapter, it talks about how this very thing, that the Israelites disobeyed God, and so they weren't allowed to enter his rest. And in that same way, it says that we should be careful so that we don't act in the same way that they did and end up being excluded from the Lord's rest as well. And the way we do that is not to ignore so great a salvation that's set before us. Okay, and finally, Proverbs. Chapter 14, verses 5 and 6. A truthful witness does not lie, but a false witness breathes out lies. The scorner seeks wisdom, but finds none, but understanding is easy for a discerning person. And I think verse 5 talks about the character of a person. A truthful witness does not lie. That is, somebody who's in the habit of telling the truth tends to tell the truth. But somebody who's in the habit of telling lies just breathes them out like water. So, okay. Well, thank you for joining me today. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Bye.